What's up, guys? Doug Polk here, and welcome back for another episode of Poker Hands. Today we're going to be breaking down a large hand that happened a week or two ago on the Hustler live stream. This hand is near and dear to my heart because someone is bluffing for a lot of money, and I like those hands. Let's go ahead and jump into the action.
So I can have a little higher EV.
4, 2.
Right, Dave? That's smart, right?
That is smart.
That's why you offered me 4 times when you had aces.
Yeah.
Oh my god. Dude, how sharp is Dave?
Can I have 200?
I was trying to take a chop. Dude,
Our hand begins at 100-200 with a $200 ante and a $400 straddle. The action folds around to the cutoff where Mariano looks down at 8-6 of clubs and decides to open it up. The button and the small blind get out of the way, and Double M looks down at ace-queen here in the middle blind. The middle blind is a very tricky thing to play in No Limit Hold'em. In your smallest blind, you really want to just be 3-betting or folding pre-flop because your odds are simply not very good to play. In the largest blind, or the straddle, you can call with all kinds of hands because you close the action and you're getting a better price. That middle blind, it's tricky, and there are a lot of different things that go into it, like what is the open raise size? Are the players behind you aggressive, or rather is the player behind you aggressive? What is the amount of hands your opponent opens in the cutoff? How much is the ante for? All of these things might influence you one way or another. However, with a hand like ace-queen, you're definitely going to play. I think with this hand, you probably want to do a mix of both calling and 3-betting. They're both good in their own ways. I do kind of prefer to 3-bet, but from what I've kind of looked at here on the side, it seems like maybe calling is an option you should be exercising quite frequently, so they're both totally fine. Double M decides to take his matters into his own hands and 3-bet it and raises it up to 4,200 to go. Straddle gets out of the way, back over to Mariano. And now with 8-6 of clubs, bit of an interesting spot here pre-flop because these guys are mega deep. We're talking 400 blinds deep. I've been playing around with some of the ranges from the Smash Live Cash course over at Upswing by Nick Petrangelo, which has lots of pre-flop ranges for you to dive into and see what you should be playing. And this hand looks to be right around the cusp either way, given the pre-flop size. I'm going to go ahead and put some 8-6 suited into the sim I'm going to run while we go along this hand. But basically, this hand is probably a defend, but mixing it up and folding every now and then seems pretty reasonable. Hands like this could occasionally 4-bet in short-handed formats, but when there are a lot of people at the table, you really want to have something a bit stronger. Really, you want to have an ace in your hand or maybe some kind of paired hand to be 4-betting with. It's just not quite high enough of a caliber hand, but super deep in position. I don't mind calling, which Mariano does, and let's take a flop.
You're accepting the chop before.
Pair of 8s for Mariano, backdoor clubs, backdoor straight equity, double M with ace-queen on this ace-high flop. Mark Crozier says, when is Bart going to play on the stream again? Bart flies in like once every 6 weeks or so. He does some commentary, he plays on the stream. I'm sure I'll be back soon.
No pressure for me at all.
The flop comes ace-9-8 rainbow. Both players have connected. Double M has top pair, second kicker, and Mariano has bottom pair with the backdoor flush draw. Neither player is probably thrilled with their hands, but Double M has to feel pretty good having such a strong hand here on the flop. He decides to go ahead and bet slightly over 1/3 pot. In this situation, when you have top pair, you're definitely going to want to lean towards betting. It's a hand that you want to be able to get some value with and start to build the pot. I did run this solution, though, briefly, and it does seem like there's a lot more checking that goes on in this flop than you might initially think when we're using this kind of flop size. I put in some approximations here pre-flop so we can have an idea for the kinds of hands that you can have here and what you might want to bet or check. And you can see that there's actually a lot less betting here on the flop than you might think, given that it's an ace-high board and you 3-bet. I think the logic for this is that both players actually have a lot of hands that connect here, and the in-position player has way more hands like ace-9 suited, ace-8 suited, 9s, and 8s. The fact that you can have ace-king, while it is important as the person that's 3-betting, the in-position player can definitely have some of these hands pre-flop as well, given the stack depth. Anyway, Double M decides to go ahead and bet here on the flop, and now the action is over to Mariano, who decides to bump it up to $10,000 to go. And I will say, when I first saw this, it seems a little bit spewy to me, just because you have so many other hands that you might want to raise with. Jack 10 suited, Queen Jack suited, Queen 10 suited, 7-6 suited, 7-5 suited, 10-7 suited if you made a light call pre-flop. There are a lot of hands that you can raise with that are draws here on the flop that can look to barrel on different runouts. But I ran this and it actually seems pretty solver approved. You want to be able to sometimes raise with your pairs in these situations to give yourself some bluff candidates on different runouts. Also, it's a little different in ring games compared to heads up. In ring games, you're going to have a lot more sets in your range, and you're going to have less hands like weak bottom pairs, so it makes more sense to turn those into bluffs. Here we can see the kinds of hands that are going to raise on the flop facing this bet. And 8-6 of clubs is actually going to be doing it about 29% of the time or so. So definitely a play you're going to want to be working in somewhat frequently. I will also note I did not put all of the 8-6 suited in here pre-flop and rather just a fraction of it. So it might play a little different if you always call this hand pre. A lot of the other candidates that raise the flop here are things you might expect. Hands like sets, 9s and 8s are of course both raising here quite often. Ace 9 and Ace 8. 9-8 suited, 8-7 suited as a bluff, 9-7 suited as a bluff, and even some of these Ace X hands will raise from time to time. Facing this flop raise out of position, I think Double M has a pretty clear call. He has a good hand. He can try and see a turn. It's worth mentioning every now and then a hand like Ace King will bet 3-bet the flop, and he should have some hands that re-raise here once again. Hands like a set of 9s or a set of 8s or even a set of aces. Those can all be hands that want a 3-bet here on the flop, and then you can work in a few hands like Jack 10 or 10-9 or Ace King thin for value. But with Ace Queen, I think you have a pretty slam dunk call, which he decides to make, and let's take a turn.
Kill Bluff says, Tuck, would you stay in a hotel room for 1 year for $1 million?
The way I do it, Dave, is
I don't know if I do that
someone
because
who like gives action.
no, I would not do that
If it's someone who's not.
because I have a kid and there's no amount of money that I would give up to like lose a year of my kid's life in the sense of like not being able to spend that with him. I have 2 boys, so yeah, I'm not doing that.
28.
More friendly. You don't feel like bad gambling.
Like I only have so much time with my kids. I'm not giving up that for anything.
I should have just been like, what? Eat it. Yeah. You double or you die.
I was talking to somebody about giving up like technology or something like that. Double M in the tank here with Ace Queen. Mariano just stone cold bluff with a pair of 8s. I mean, and Double M is not a believer. He makes the call. Wow, this pot now $85,100. Mariano stepping out of line.
The turn comes the deuce of diamonds, and now Double M checks once again over to Mariano with his bottom pair. I will say I think Mariano should have maybe made his flop size slightly larger. He went about half pot, and now if he wants to set up a turn bet here that sets up a river jam, he's going to have to overbet the pot and bet 110, 115%. I think in general, you want to make your bets nice and easy if you're setting up to go all in. I think typically speaking, you want to make your flop bets to size at something like 3/4-ish pot, and then you're going to be able to bet about 3/4 to full pot on the turn, and then all in the river will be something in that same vicinity. Set yourself up with nice, easy bet sizes to make your life easy, and then you'll know what size to bet. In this situation now, Mariano decides just to go for a roughly pot-sized bet here on the turn. If Double M decides to call, it's going to leave something like 130% pot in the river. I just think it's a slightly less accurate size than a geometric size that sets up equivalent sizes on each street. But Mariano does decide to fire here on the turn. Now he's really trying to sell the story that he's flopped a set or 2 pair, and he's continuing it with this bet. If we once again go to the solver, we can see that 8-6 of clubs would actually be quite frequently a bet here. And the solver does prefer to use a geometric size, which slightly overbets the pot to set up for a river jam. 8-6 of clubs is a 68% frequency turn bet, so a fairly high percentage of the time 8-6 will actually go ahead and bet the turn. But we should note that the preferred bluffs for the solver are hands like 8-7, which always barrels, 9-7. Actually, 9-7 is probably about equal. 10-9, 9-7, 8-6. These are all sort of in the same vicinity. But 8-7, 7-6 are hands that are a bit preferred. Jack 10 actually does a good amount of checking on the turn, which might seem counterintuitive. I think the idea is that when you have those straight draws yourself, you basically make it more likely your opponent has a good hand. And so you really only bet the turn with these types of draws if you have the diamonds to go along with it. Back over to Double M, this pot is not going the right direction for just top pair here with a queen kicker because simply put, there's too much money going in. And even though you might have the best hand, When you are beat, you're oftentimes quite dead or even completely dead. And when you're behind, they might bluff you on the river. In situations like this, I typically advocate to players, look, if your hand can't improve on the river that often and you're not going to feel confident to call down, it's a good situation to maybe just let go on the turn. I will note that there is an important suit factor here. It is much nicer to have the ace of spades than any other ace. The reason is that when you have the ace of spades, you block ace 9 suited and ace 8 suited, whereas the other two aces don't block those two pairs, which makes it a little better to call when you have the ace of spades. In fact, the solver only really calls ace queen here if it does have the ace of spades and would let this hand go. Double M doesn't quite feel so strongly and thinks Mariano might be up to no good, which, to be fair to him, he certainly is. And he does make the call, and let's take a river in this almost $100,000 pot.
Does not get bailed out. Now 10-7 got there. So you start thinking of some of the draws that Mariano might have done this with. 10-7 is one of them, I guess. Maybe he picked up diamonds. Maybe he just had it. This pot's got $85,000 in it. Mariano not afraid to put his chips to use, as we've seen time and time again. Will he do it again here? Boom. Mariano dropping the hammer. Double M called 28,000 on the turn. Can he call 88,000 here? What's the EV on this one?
The river comes an offsuit jack, which maybe seems kind of neutral, but I do think it favors the in-position player. In-position can have queen 10 suited, especially queen 10 of diamonds, whereas out of position is a little less likely to have a hand like that because you wouldn't have showdown value if you brick your hand. It's possible Double M has that hand, but it's one combo, and it's a little more likely he might have turned it into some kind of raise. Also, in position could maybe have 10-7 suited every now and then if they got a little spicy, and maybe it could be bluff raising the flop with a hand like Jack 9 suited, whereas I think it's a little less likely that Double M has a hand like that because it should just be folding the turn. Anyway, Double M checks it over to him, as he should with all of his hands, and now Mariano has a spot where he has to think about what to do. And here's a good rule of thumb, guys, at home. If you raise the flop and bet the turn, and the river is a relatively good card for your range like it is here, and also you do not have a missed flush draw or a missed one of the suit of the flush draw, you simply put just gotta fire again. If you don't fire with these hands, you're going to be giving up all too often, and it's going to be easy for people if they float you kind of wide. And think what would have happened here if Mariano had just waved the white flag and thrown it in. Double M would have won this pot and got to showdown with just top pair, and basically his somewhat light turn flow would have been rewarded. But Mariano has other ideas and makes it 88,000 here on the river. I do think that this size is not the best. You don't want to leave yourself something like 30, 40,000 behind. If you're going to have a sizable river bet like this, you want to set it up so that you're going all in. That means a little bigger on the flop, a little bigger on the turn, and then you'll be a little bigger all in on the river. The reason you want to do that is when you have a value bet, you want to try and win all the money. And when you make your bet sizes bigger, you actually get to have more bluffs and you get to win the pot more often. So overall, it's just better for you to use that bigger size. If you're going to have a non-all-in size, which can be fine in some situations, you want to size each street a little bit smaller. I don't know if it really totally makes sense in a situation like this. I would have just made it a bit bigger on the flop and the turn. Either way, Mariano does decide to go all in here with the 8-6 of clubs. And when I first saw this, I got to say it looked kind of spewy. But let's see what our computers have to say. All right, so we can see that 8-6 of clubs will be betting the river about 70% of the time. You can't see it because my face is in the way. Here, I'll move it a little bit just so you can check it out. There you go, 70% of the time. If we look at this again, you can see the main hands we're going to bluff with are 10-9 and 8-7. We're simply always calling those hands pre-flop, so we have more of them. And they also make nicer bluffs because they do block some of the hands that could have straight properties and or straights themselves. Hands like 10-9 of diamonds actually make nice bluffs despite missing the flush draw because Queen 10 of diamonds is one of the combos that gets there for both players, and when you have a 9, it's so much less likely that the other player has a set. Over to Double M here with Ace Queen. Looking like he should probably be looking to fold. It does like to call here if you have specifically the ace of spades and the queen of diamonds. Ace of spades is good here, as we talked about earlier, because you do block more of those two pair hands. Queen of diamonds is good because you block the queen 10 of diamonds. But if you do have the hand he had, ace of diamonds, queen of hearts, you're mainly just folding. And realistically, you shouldn't get here very often with it anyway, because you probably should have folded on the turn. So that's what the nerdy computer has to say. Psh, who needs that computer anyway? It says fold, but we all know the thing that you're supposed to do. So what does double M do? Does he follow the nerd scientists? Or does he break out and find a way to make the call?
Looks like he wants to let it go. I tell you, Mariano's got heart. This guy has got... courage beyond belief. This is amazing. And double M lets it go.
Somebody say something. Jesus Christ. Wow. Let me get chips.
Thank you for joining me here today for Poker Hands. I know we got into the solo streets a little bit. I'm going to do a mix of stuff like that and a mix of some more traditional kinds of analysis. In fact, in the comments, let me know, what do you prefer? Do you prefer more just me kind of telling you how I would play it, you know, just using my mind and my brains? Or do you prefer us getting into the math and some nitty gritty? Let me know in the comments below so that you can help me make good content that you're going to enjoy. Thank you for tuning in. As always, hit that subscribe button, and I'll see you again soon.